Broadcasting from the Blanchistan Centre. This is Phoenix FM.
The internet is a communications tool used the world over where people can come together to bitch about movies and share pornography with one another.
According to the Nerd Index, you should be upside down in a junior high toilet around the clock.
This is We'll do it live! Time goes in, time goes out. Never miscommunication. It's over 9,000!
My name is Foxy.
The balls are in there. Do a barrel roll! Don't face me, bro! It's a trap! I'm a fire in my labor! Time to Hey, Charlie, wake up! Oh, God, oh, man!
Hello, one and all, and welcome back to another edition of Nerd to No Basis here on Phoenix 92.5 FM. With me, we have Dara. How are you doing, Dara?
Ahoy! Comics are weird.
That's never a truer statement has been said.
Yeah, because I'm on the Big Bang comic website at the moment, so obviously they don't sponsor us, but they are friends of the show. And they're doing a sale at the moment, and I'm just kind of going through, and I'm like, yeah, I know what some of these are, but a lot of them I don't. There's like a Blue Lock manga section, like complete collection in their comic section, which is weird. That's like 80 quid. I'm like, I'm not gonna pay 80 quid for like manga when I can just watch the anime.
Unless, why not both?
No, because I don't have any space, you see. That's the problem. I spent the past couple of weeks, if not months, it was past month specifically, going on tour and cleaning and selling stuff and getting rid of stuff. So I'm trying to not get loads of stuff that I.
Well, actually, to sell you on a product that we are absolutely not sponsored by, but I just think it's a great deal. Have I told you about the Shonen Jump app?
You've not.
So Shonen Jump, you know, the kind of the major like manga property over Japan.
Yes.
All the biggest hits, like, you know, your One Piece, your Bleach, your Naruto, your Hero Academia, all published through that.
Yes.
Their online app is a monthly subscription of about €3 a month.
Okay, so this sounds like Comixology, which was similar to it. It's now owned by Amazon.
And you get everything.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what Comixology was like. Yeah, it's totally worth it. It's a great idea.
Yeah, like it is worth it alone for the fact that you get to read all of One Piece plus everything else.
So here's my question, actually, on that. Do you? Because for comics, it's kind of a little bit different. But when you're reading manga, sorry, not anime, do you like the physicality of it, or are you happy enough to read off screen?
For the most part, happy enough to read off screen.
Really?
I have a couple. Like, the only one I really collect is My Hero Academia.
Right.
And Akira. Actually, I've got most of the Akira set now.
Right.
But for the most part, it's because of the kind of the convenience of it.
Yeah.
Because of that
really
Shonen Jump app. It is like the ability just to be able to kind of jump in. Plus, I do a lot of this like at work. I have a lot of downtime, so it's handy just to open up a browser on a laptop and just kind of scroll through a few chapters. Because as well, manga is extremely digestible.
Yeah.
You can get through a volume in like an hour.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. That makes an awful lot of sense.
And like when you're collecting it, they're not actually terribly expensive. Like a volume's maybe like 10 quid or so.
Yeah. Comics are a lot more expensive.
That's it. It's not super expensive, but when you just kind of want to blitz through it, because you want to like, typically for me, like I'm still kind of on the more mainstream side of it. So I'm still catching up on stuff that's already been long finished for like years. So just the idea of being able to pick up the first issue of Naruto and just blitz through the entire thing there on a PC, it's super handy.
Yeah, I mean, there is that. It's, for me, I'm not there yet with comics, but it is very convenient. Even reading a book, I still prefer kind of the physicality of a book, but at the same time, you're like, can't carry this around.
That's the curious one. Actual books, actual written word, I would for the physical version. I never got onto e-readers.
See, well, e-readers I have, and I don't like them that much, to be honest with you. Tablets are actually a nice in between. But it's still, I wouldn't enjoy a book the same way if I wasn't reading it physically, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
I can't really explain that, but that's I think we're on the same page there. But an interesting point on that was because I did actually make that change fully with video games. I'm now at a point with video games, with the PS5 where I'm like, oh, I have to get up and change the disc, you know? And
It's so funny. I'm
it's
much the
so
same now.
it's wild.
I
I don't
like
know when that
I,
happened, but it did.
for me it was a combination of COVID not being able to like go out and buy games physically,
Yeah,
and I moved somewhere a bit more remote, so
yeah.
kind of getting things shipped was always a bit more precarious. So
Yeah,
for me, it was a defined combination of those two factors.
no, that's really fair.
But
That makes an awful lot of
it
sense.
was, and the combination of me also now getting a Steam Deck, which
Yes.
Steam, like, there's no beating that price point of just being able to
No.
pick up a game for 20 quid
Yeah,
less.
but it's interesting because like the PS5 have like the PSN thing in general is actually really good
Mm,
value. It's a mix between like Game Pass and different publishers having their own kind of offerings there. Like there's some Ubisoft stuff and that. We will talk about Ubisoft separately in a second, but um yeah, with that, like you can kind of just get whatever game you want, and that's when I picked up Midnight Suns, and I'm like, oh, this is great. And I had something like 15 hours in it before I went to the States, and then I got it on the Steam Deck, and I had 15 hours on the Steam Deck, well, from when I was over in the States. I love Midnight Suns. Then I came home, and I was like, oh, I haven't actually played my first playthrough of Midnight Suns. I'll stick it on the PS5, and they're like, oh, that's $80 or €80. I'm like, what? So the downside of not owning the game or having one of these kind of Game Pass services or rent, we have this collection, Netflix services, is
mm.
they can just remove it. And they did. They just removed it. Like, nope.
It's yeah, no,
And
that's the real kicker with like digital consumption.
and it was wild because I'm just like, oh, whoa, okay. One, this while I love this game, um, and I do, I think you should play it. It's phenomenal. You should definitely buy it. However, it is not worth 80 euros. Not by a country mile.
No,
Amazon
no.
Amazon, however, had the physical version, like the physical special edition, one of them for €15. That I bought immediately and arrived at my house the next day. So I'm back playing Midnight Suns. But it's interesting how they had won me off buying a physical game. And then because of predatory practices like that, I went right back to physical media.
Well,
So it's
that's
insane
I
how
mean
that kind of
that
works.
kind of shows the importance of keeping track of that physical media, especially for things that like
Absolutely.
you like. I like that's I if it's something that I'm kind of actually like really passionate about, I will try to get a physical copy. Like I've bought the games I think 3 or 4 times at this point. But
Mm.
when they released the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection, the new one that's like on all the major consoles, even though I already have it and can play it readily on like a PS3, I made a point of owning that physically just so I could give this to somebody and say, "Here is Metal Gear Solid. Go play
Yeah.
these games."
Yeah, no, like there is still, I know there's also the collectible side of it as well. Like
Hmm.
I have quite a good PS2 collection, and I'm kind of like tempted to sell them, but also not really because I'm just kind of like, no, I actually kind of like owning some of these games. Like even the new Silent Hill 2 get remaster. I don't really have a desire to play that, but I like having the original PS2 game, So it is as we're moving forward and forward where like these games become more readily accessible and stuff. It's more kind of like, well, what's the point of physical media? I think it's three different things. It's like one, people just like to have stuff. Like even
The
with
collector's mindset.
yeah, even with the band, like,
Yeah.
we still make CDs. We still do tape for some reason. And the reason is people buy it. You know,
Yeah.
there is a market for cassette tapes. And I personally I don't really understand that, but I still make them because they sell. If they didn't sell, I wouldn't make them.
Yeah, but I mean, there's also the preservation aspect.
Yeah, exactly. But that's
of it's because they can't just take it away from you like they did with Midnight Suns.
exactly, that's number two, the preservation of it, where you're like, you own the game, you have the game, it's physically there, and for like, just say you have your old Game Boy, you have like Pokemon Blue or something like that.
Mm.
You'll always have Pokemon Blue in 20, 30 years, assuming the game system is still there and you store in the right way, you'll still be able to play it from your save file. That's the
Yeah,
thing that you don't get with digital media. And the third one is just the kind of like a hangover, really, where it's a mix between the two, where you're like convenience. It's more convenient to buy the game because it's cheaper, or you get something like a collector statue or something like that. And my thought on this is it'll be three. Out of those three, it'll be interesting to see which one wins eventually. Because everyone's going, oh, we want to remove the disc tray and DRM, and that's the conversation that people have been having since the Xbox One came out. And now it's just like, well, you're never going to change that mindset from people if there's still a risk of, well, we might just take the game away from you.
Yeah. And I mean, that kind of shows why, like, companies like Limited Run are probably doing as well as they are, because they are offering things that were just put up on Steam straight direct from the developers, a physical chance to kind of stay relatable, stay available.
Yeah. But then at the same time, like, as I said to you, if Midnight Suns had just stayed where it was, it's just for transparency, I bought all the DLC. I got the game for I didn't get the game, obviously. I was renting the game through the service for free, and I played X amount of hours on it. And then I bought some DLC. I actually dropped down real money for it. If they had just kept it that way, I would have happily just went with that. But now, because of that, I was like, well, I'm not going to give you $90 for that. There's no way. There's no way.
On top of all the money you've already given them.
Yeah, I mean, I've already bought the game on the Steam Deck, for 40, for what was it, €25, I think. I was just like, there's no way. So
No.
I think, like, these services are really good, and obviously they're convenient. And like, we've said this before when it comes to piracy, once something is convenient, if it's not that we condone piracy, but the more convenient something is, the more people are going to adopt it, and that was the great appeal
Yeah.
of all the Netflix, where it's like, it has everything. As soon as it starts to not have everything, or it's too hard to find it, like if you have to go actively looking for something, and then pay for it.
The quality starts to slip. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're looking for something, you're not gonna pay for it, if you know what I mean. There are other methods that are quicker, and that's just the real challenge. And when it comes to like physical media, it's like, yeah, it takes space, and there's the hoarding aspect and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, you still own it. So that's just it's an interesting thing I've seen in the past like month or so.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny that you mentioned that you bring up earlier Silent Hill 2, because I was talking to Kean last week about horror games I'm playing lately. And I teased the listeners last week that I would talk about, that I would mention it. Have you heard about Signalis, Darren?
No, I have not.
What if Silent Hill was in space and also gay?
As in, the main characters were in space and gay, or?
Yes, correct.
Oh, okay. Go on.
Of many of the short form horror games I played, Signalis is the one that absolutely stood out to me that I've played recently. So, as I mentioned, this is a survival horror in the style of Silent Hill and Resident Evil to a certain degree, but it's also it's a throwback kind of retro 3D style. So, kind of blocky polygonal graphics, but with an overlay of like 32-bit pixel art. And it delves into, and it's hard to talk about because the game itself is also very abstract and like psychological and cosmic horror to its own degree. The kind of the base premise is you play as an Elster unit, a robot a robotic cyborg companion unit on a long form spaceship where your ship has crash landed on a deserted planet. Your human captain has gone missing. And so you delve through this deep, dark, kind of almost Soviet communist kind of aesthetic, like underground base to try and find her. And as you delve further, the entire thing just like the reality of it warps around you. And as you the whole game, by the time you've finished it, it's a game where I would to tell you the ending, I don't think would actually spoil it for you because it's all so abstract and like it's a game that like has you reach your own conclusions on what was, if any of it was actually real to begin with. Does any of what I'm saying make any sense?
Yeah,
I think I'm spinning in circles.
It kind of sounds like the appeal of Prey that came out a couple of years ago.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Because Prey, obviously, it was telling a totally different story, but it had the same kind of setup where the first playthrough was like a straight playthrough where you're like, yeah, this is happening. And then as you keep playing the game, you're like, wait, what is happening? And then eventually you realize none of it was happening at all.
That's it. Like Silent Hill.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, because not to completely spoil Silent Hill, but everyone knows what the deal with Silent Hill is. Silent Hill is the place of the mind. Like,
yeah.
And the bases of Signalis are kind of much the same. And as you get through it, you realize that the entire premise of the game, the entire location of the game, might be the projected dreaming of a like psychokinetic person being shunted onto your mind, but also the mind of a catatonic commander back on Earth. Like it's insanity. It's absolute nuts. But it's held up by very like classic old school like Resident Evil Silent Hill mechanics with like your limited inventory, your tight corridors, just stellar visual design. And like if you're looking for like a good horror game that really like scratches the noodle, I've recommended Crow Country in the past. That's a much more straightforward one of these. If you like that and the original Resident Evils, this is an absolute must.
I'll definitely have to check it out. I mean, it's like this time of year, obviously coming up to Halloween, everybody's playing horror games or looking for something that has a bit of a kick to it. But I always find the real scary games are these more slow moving ones.
Oh, without a doubt. Jeez, I was only talking about it with Kian last week that I inadvertently ended up playing a bunch of horror games without realizing it was October because I was just looking for shorter games. And that was it. I mentioned I talked about it last week. I won't get too far into it, but Mouse Washing is another one.
Okay.
That was a 3-hour another sci-fi psychological horror. I think, you know what? Alien was just a real treat for the genre because it made people realize we can make something really good and scary because spaceships are small, confined spaces.
Yeah, like it takes, one big thing to kind of crack the ceiling sometimes and then for good ideas to see through. But it seems like a lot of games nowadays, well, the best games are still very much indie games. That's just kind of been part of the course for a while. But these like, I don't want to say psychological horror because that's been done to death. But these more kind of like thoughtful games have been coming out, and you just once you have a Steam Deck, it really kind of makes it a lot easier to check them out. But good suggestions, Kev. Absolutely, I need to play more horror games. I've kind of gone off it for a while because my entire life, gaming wise, has been consumed by Midnight Suns and Vampire Survivors, and that's it. They're the only two games. They're the only games.
Oh, Jarrett, did you see the update they announced for Vampire Survivors?
No, was it?
Ode to Castlevania.
But the whole thing
they're doing a whole Castlevania update to Vampire Survivors, and I think it's like
the whole thing is
and music.
But the whole thing is like a knockoff of Castlevania.
No, but this time they got the license.
Okay. I mean, look, it's the most obvious thing in the world that makes the most sense, but it's just like You already did that. It's called the game. But that's awesome. I love it. But here, speaking of which, have you played Dead by Daylight?
I haven't. I know of it. I've seen videos, and I know they've added every like horror mascot in gaming under the sun to
Yeah,
it.
so like it's funny because like it's exactly what you mentioned where they started off kind of well, not kind of. They started off without without any license and there was no licensed characters there at all. And then it got successful and they've slowly implemented everyone from from Silent Hill characters to Pyramid Head obviously in Silent Hill to Freddy Krueger, Samara from The Ring, even Ash from The Evil Dead is there.
Oh
So
no, the one I love is that they just got Nicolas Cage.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
not
yeah.
not a character,
No,
just
just Nicolas
Nicolas
Cage.
Cage.
Yeah. No, it is really, really good. If you haven't had a chance to play it yet, I would recommend it. Like it's you find like I don't really like playing as the survivors. I much rather play as one of the hunters. And my personal preference is um the pig from Saw. So
Yeah.
she's really, really good because obviously you're not playing as Crane because he's an old man. You're like one of the hunters that he sends out.
But
And
why don't you want to play as an old man?
you, you can't do anything. You know, you can't do anything. But the thing about the way they activate that is you can move super fast. You can set like a bunch of traps and like just like the actual mechanism of it really, really helps you. But then there's a much more brutal way of playing where you can play as like one of their normal characters, where it's just this brute and just picks people up and puts them on hooks and stuff. It's kind of like knockoff Leatherface. So I would say if you haven't played it, if anyone's listening, who's interested in this, it's on Steam like a lot at discount, and it's also on the PS5 on discount as well. So I would say pick it up. It's really good. Like it's not the smartest game in the world, and you do need online connectivity to play it because it's with people, but you can actually really, really have a good time with it and get into it. So that's one of the overlooked horror games I think that I'm surprised you haven't played that much, Kev, or at all.
Online games like are a real hard sell on me.
Oh, I totally
I
get it.
it's
I'm so antisocial
it's
in that
it's
way, but
rare. Yeah, no, it's
this is my exception.
okay. I'll give it a shout. Actually, yeah. Again, now that I have the Steam Deck, things like that are a lot more accessible. So I'll
Yeah,
definitely keep that in mind.
absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
while we're in the kind of spooky thoughts, gaming's not the only thing you can do. Obviously, horror movies are huge and everywhere, and you can watch about a dozen of them and more all month long.
You can.
But I think you've seen a couple of like new ones that have been kicking around the cinemas now lately.
Yeah, so I went to go see I didn't go to a horathon this year. I think it's this weekend. When you're listening to this, it'll be on. I
Mm.
think it is. I'm not too sure. I'll have to check. But Cineworld, not to name cinemas outright, but I did go to Cineworld a lot this week over this month. And the reason why is because they were doing Terrifier screenings. So they showed Terrifier 1 and 2, and then they showed obviously Terrifier 3, and I also saw Smile 2.
So Terrifier. Here's the thing.
Yeah,
I know about Terrifier because my sister is a sicko,
yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. And you know
and
what?
that's
I would say no judgment on your sister, but absolute judgment on your sister.
because
Like,
here's the thing. Like I know about the Terrifier movies from their infamy. You know,
yes.
they
Yeah,
are
yeah,
they are gore fests that are kind
yeah,
of bordering on snuff.
yeah.
Tell me,
Okay,
Dara,
so
what is it? What is it about Terrifier? Because Terrifier 3 has been doing shockingly well,
yeah,
I would say.
yeah. So I'm actually like, there's a couple of movie reviews I want to do for this channel. So if anyone's listening to us on Phoenix FM, please go over to Nerd to Know Media on YouTube. We drop some more content there. I will eventually get around to doing some reviews, some long-term form thoughts on this, or even short videos on this, because I've actually been trying to figure that question out because I have a couple of friends who love Terrifier and the band we love horror movies as well. So we were kind of like we obviously seen all the Terrifier movies, and the third one is a bit too much. So I want to answer your question before I get into that one. So look, so the main appeal really I think is just one, it's like proper grind. It's it's like
Mm.
grindy, grindhouse, throwback 80s slasher, practical effects everywhere. And it's goofy and silly, right? I mean, like, and the character as well, Art the Clown, has been a big selling point as well because he's so goofy. But
That's it. I've seen the gifs of Art the Clown just mugging for the camera.
then it's like he'll mug to the camera and then do the most brutal murder ever. And it's like, I guess the appeal is that kind of juxtaposition, particularly in what I want to just park three for a second. So the first one, again, I never saw them before. The first time I saw them was at this double screening because I was like, okay, I haven't seen them. I do want to see them. I might as well go see them in a very unique format because they weren't in the cinema. They never got a cinematic release, one and two.
Mm.
So they were funded on Kickstarter as well, which is even more wild. So this is like a very these movies knew their audience, worked their audience, and then the second one kind of blew up and became even more successful than they could possibly imagine. So the first one is very, very low budget. Like, it has a budget, but it's barely there. It's very self-contained, but it's so brutal. Like, I won't go into it too much. I might do it in a later video, but it basically covers these two girls. They're on a night out on Halloween. They find this clown finds them, and he just kind of follows them around. He disappears, and the girl has to go to the bathroom. She ends up going to this bathroom in like this rundown, condemned building, and Art finds them and starts picking them off.
Mm.
And more people can get involved in this, and it gets known as this like massacre. Um, and the movie is set up by this girl saying, "Look, last year I survived this massacre. Her face is all mangled up." And then that's the story they're telling. At the end of it, Art dies, and it's revealed that the girl who was at the beginning of the movie was in that massacre, and she was the sister of the girl who was on the night out, right? So that's the big twist, and it's a good movie. It's like, okay, it's fine. It's not that bad. There are one or two pretty bad scenes in it, where you're like, oh, that's, like,
That's a bit much.
yeah, but the violence is like, in horror movies, the way there's the last girl and you think she's gonna be all
Yeah.
right. I mean, like, the last girl gets her face eaten off. You know,
Okay.
that's
Right.
that's yeah. There's no holding back, right? So the second one, so obviously that was my impression of it, and then there was a bit of an intermission, and I saw the second one, and I was like, wait a minute, a lot more money in this. There's a much more of a story. There's actual characters in it, and Art is still there, being Art. Like, he gets revived. He gets revived by some satanic demon, and he's gone off on this
Okay.
on this new mission. And you're like, okay, fair enough. They're kind of going this direction. The soundtrack is banging as well. It's so good. The soundtrack for Terrifier 2, look it up on Spotify, it is really, really good. But the kills are more extreme. Like, it's not just like, oh, he, would kill this person and that's it. No, he like actively enjoys doing it. So he'll make them suffer as much as possible and then kill them. It's like, I think that's why the appeal is there, because it's like there's this sadism with this character where you're like, oh, you actually think it's funny. You think it's funny to like brutal. It's the appeal of the Joker, right? Like, we'll get to that in a second, so park that one. Um,
Put a pin in that.
but it actually is like that
Yeah.
that murderous clown thing with the volume maxed and it's peaking, right? So I think that's why people like enjoy it, because he's having a wonderful time while he's doing this
It
moment,
is
you know.
the entire thing is just cranked up to 11,
To
is what
11,
I'm
yeah,
hearing. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. So there's a bit in that specifically. It's known as the bedroom scene. So if anyone's seen it, you know what I'm talking about. And basically, he does horrible things to this girl, keeps her alive until her
Mm.
mom walks in, so she can see her daughter can see her mom,
Mm.
and it's just like it's horrific, right? But he's having a wonderful time, so he's laughing his head off the whole time, but he's completely silent. And then the very next scene is he's serving Halloween candy in the mom's head, and everybody thinks it's a joke. So it has just these like it's like tension, shock and tension release, where it's just like, oh my God, that's awful, but also that's hilarious.
Like,
And
it's
this guy's
it's
really goofy.
so it's so like down, it's so plummeted down the line of black comedy that it has kind of almost come out the other end.
Yeah, exactly. And I like why the second one again, it that bedroom scene is it's a tough watch. Like when I was 16, I watched the first three Hellraisers in a row and I got up on my stomach went to it. Like it actually physically dropped because I was
Yeah,
just like, oh, that really was a lot,
yeah.
I didn't
And
get that
and
with
tell
the
me this, Dara. How was this watch? How was watching this with like a big room full of people?
See, oh, it was actually a great time, right? Because everyone was in there. Everyone like watching the first two, everyone in there was a fan or kind of
Okay.
or was there to watch it because it was a one-time thing. I know they did it in other cinemas, but I just happened to see it in Cineworld in the city, and I was like, okay, this is great, and it was a really really fun experience. Um, it obviously built up to the third one. So as I said, I was a big fan of the second one. I will still say, if you're gonna watch any of them, watch the second one. It's kind of self-contained, and it's a fun movie for as brutally violent as it is. The third one.
With that little asterisk there.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, if you're in any way sensitive, don't watch it. If you don't like slashers, if you don't like 80s schlock, like the first two are complete schlock. 80s movies like Shop Mall and that kind of stuff, that's what you're looking at. You're not here for anything other than that. You're here for complete 80s throwback schlock, right?
Yeah, if the Rob Zombie House of a Thousand Corpses
Yeah.
does anything
Yeah.
for you, this is in that avenue. Yeah,
It's a much better movie though, I'll be honest with you. They're actually good
fair.
movies. The third one on the other hand though, right? It's like I was watching the director talk about it, and he's like, everybody likes Art the Clown too much. You're not supposed to like Art the Clown, which is true. I mean, this kind of happened in the 80s with Freddy Krueger, where everybody loved Freddy Krueger, and you really shouldn't like Freddy Krueger.
No,
Again, look up his backstory on a five. We can't really mention it too much.
no,
Um,
no.
but that's what he never should have been a children's Halloween costume. It shouldn't have been a kid's cereal, quite the opposite. And Art the Clown was kind of on had to do that, where he was like, it was an anti-hero kind of thing in some way, but no, earned for no reason, like there's no reason to like him. He's objectively an awful man and then an awful demon. And in the third one, they're like, yeah, we really have to push this. So there's stuff in the third one that, while it isn't as violent as the second movie, the second one is objectively probably the most violent one. It's mean-spirited. And I don't like that. I mean, like, there's no reason for him to do what he does, like, other than find it funny, which I know it's a bit of a bit of a contradiction, but it just comes off as mean, where it's like he freezes the Santa to death. The Santa's still alive, and then he hacks the Santa up. It's like, and he's still alive. You know what I mean? It's like, okay,
Yeah,
that's and the
it
whole movie
it
is
it
the whole movie is kind of filled with that. And then there's like the big controversy in this as well is he kills a lot of kids. Now they don't die on camera because that's one line that the director didn't want to watch. Like there's no gleeful hacking up of kids, which
okay.
again, that's I think that's a bridge too far for anybody, right?
Yeah,
And I don't, at least he knows that. But a lot of kids die in this movie, and you're like, oh, because it's based on Christmas. And you're like, oh, it's just a bit too much. But then at the same
it
time,
it it lost its internal sense of fun.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But then again, I totally get why they did that. And
Hmm.
the bit where I was just like, whoa, this is way too much. She walks in, like the main character walks in, and her uncle has been crucified. His head's been cut off, put on top of the tree. The demon lady is wearing a crown of thorns and puts the thorns on her, and it's just like, this is just, it's just very, very much, It's
Yeah,
the problem with these kind of movies when you're doing them, and it happened with Saw, is that you have to keep topping it. And I think the fourth one, and again, like I was expecting this to wrap up at the third one. I didn't know there was a fourth one. So this might just be a blip, and the fourth one comes on, and they're like, okay, it actually makes a lot of sense. But they did have to make Art the Clown a bad guy, there's
they
no
had to
redeeming
make it.
feature.
They did have to make it crueler, otherwise, Art was going to become an icon.
Exactly, yeah, and he is still an icon as a movie villain, but he was like, again, he was 1 or 2 steps away from being a child's Halloween costume.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay. So in that sense, I think the movie achieved what it had to do. I
Mm.
rarely get uncomfortable in movies. I really don't. The substance, but that kind of hit the line. The substance did it for me completely, where I actually nearly passed out in the cinema, and not because it was too violent. I'm afraid of needles, and the needle reality of the first 30 minutes freaked me out so much. I was like, oh God. And then it turns in one of the best movies I've ever seen with the body horror wonderfulness of all I can say, where it's like hyper realistic. The whole movie of how gross the movie industry can be. So basically, it tells the story of this woman, and she was a big star. She's starting to age out, and she's going to be replaced. So she finds this wo age reduction cloning technology is the best way I can describe it.
Okay.
And then she takes it, and her younger self is literally birthed out her back. So she injects,
Okay.
and she like her spine births a younger version of herself. And you have to swap back and forward every 7 days, sharing spinal fluid, or else, it just doesn't work. It's got to do with balance. So the way they say it is, you cannot take from you're one person. You're still one person. You can't take from each other. So
Yeah.
what happens is the younger one eventually takes more time because she wants to be on TV more. She wants to date guys. She wants to do all this kind of stuff. And eventually, like, the older one gets older and older and older and more decrepit.
Yeah. And
Um
here's the thing. I think worth pointing because I've seen the ads and I'm so interested. It looks so good. Like,
yeah, it's
I saw the ad and they pointed out that like, the older character you're saying is Demi Moore,
it's Demi
who
Moore, yeah.
is pretty objectively an extremely beautiful woman.
But see, that's exactly that's the
And
whole
that's kind of the point.
that's the point of
Yeah.
the movie, yeah. And it's actually like these body horror movies, again, like they can be pure schlock. This isn't. It has some really schlocky parts in it, particularly the ending, which I'll get in a second. But
Mm.
the whole premise of this movie is the older woman, the more decrepit she gets, because the younger one is stealing basically her essence. She's like, she just wants to go back. And that's kind of the message. It's like she was beautiful the way she was. And it has a really good message in it, in that sense. But then it goes completely off the deep end in like a really satisfying uh conclusion where obviously there's a conflict. I won't ruin it. There's a conflict, and then you end up with a big homunculus monster at the end, which is wonderful. Um, and it's very similar to there's a good movie that came out a couple of years ago called Starry Eyes. I don't know if you've seen that movie. You've seen that movie?
No, I don't think I know it.
So it's a similar kind of thing, but more with a satanic cult. So this girl, she wants to be an actress, and she goes to an audition, and she doesn't get the audition. So she freaks out in the bathroom, starts pulling her hair out and hitting herself. And then there just happens to be one of the casting agents there, and she's like, "Oh, come in and do that in front of us." So she does it in front of us, and it sets her on this path where eventually she joins like this coven, and she gives up everything she has to basically be an actress. It's actually a really, really good movie. But when I was watching The Substance, I was like, this really feels like Starry Eyes, and it kind of has the same trade everything you have for this moment at Glory or whatever
Mhm.
or like that. So look again, that they're strong recommendations. Terrifier
It's
2 and The Substance and then Starry Eyes. Absolutely.
I think what I want to take though is I think both the Substance and Terrifier kind of prove point here of both these movies that like you watched and have contained like vile and repugnant things to watch.
Yes.
Enjoyably vile and repugnant, but vile and repugnant. And both of these movies are still wildly outplaying a mainstream comic book movie.
How much time do we have?
We have about 15 minutes down.
Oh,
What the
wonderful.
hell is up with Joker 2?
Oh my God. Okay, so to put this into perspective, Kev, I went to go see Madam Web 6 times. We did a panel about it in front of people.
I think we've done 2 panels about it, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. In front of a live audience who also came to see this panel.
I think there is no less than 5 full hours of content on this YouTube channel
Yes, on Madam Web,
exclusively about Madam Web.
right? We're big fans of Morbin Time, not the movie, just the meme. Uh,
The act.
but with the Joker 2, I haven't even seen the movie. I don't actively want, and you know me, right? I will go and watch absolute garbage because it's funny and for the memes and for the lols, right? I have no desire to watch this movie. And it's
Okay,
weird.
I
It's
thought
weird.
you'd seen it.
No, I was actually just before I was going to go see Terrifier. I could have went to go see it. I actually had my phone out. I was like, have some time to kill. I could. No, I don't want to. Right. And that never happens because it's something to do. And I I I think that's just the overall issue, right? Nobody actively wants to see it. Nobody wanted this movie. And it's not like, and I don't know, it was just because it's a musical. Look, I like musicals. I think musicals are there is a place for them. I don't think that's the issue. The story itself, um, from what I've heard, and I've seen enough videos on it, I might link a few of them in the description of the show. I've watched people talk about it, and I've read what happens. It doesn't seem to achieve anything. It seems to actively go against its core fan base, rightly or wrongly. So if you what liked it because it was anti-society and it was someone getting revenge on people, fair. If you like that as an exploration of mental illness and how society has failed people, fair. If you liked it because you like comic book movies, it's not a comic book movie. It kind of loosely related to Batman, but I can see why you liked it. This one has nothing like that. It has Lady Gaga, who actually is quite good. She's a great singer. In this movie, apparently she doesn't even sing that well. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around who it was for.
Okay,
And
because I think what I'm hearing is that I think I have to take it upon myself to do the groundwork on this because this is a movie that fascinates me. I don't, as you said, I don't want it, but I can think of one. But I can see one person on this earth who did want this, and that is Todd Phillips
yeah, no, look, I don't think.
because he was unchecked
Yes.
putting this movie. Like
So
all reports say that this went completely unchecked by Warner Brothers and James Gunn, who was kind of top downing this entire section of the DCE unit.
so to answer your question, what happened? $200 million of unchecked hubris in a project that had no oversight. So in the first one, Bradley Cooper was a producer, and apparently he steered a lot of the madness away.
mm.
And a lot of fans actually wanted it. Like a lot of people love the first one. Like it won an Oscar and made $1 billion on a very, very
That's
low budget.
I've got mixed feelings about the first one, but I can look at it and say Joaquin Phoenix and Zazie Beetz put in great performances.
Yeah, look, I'm not a huge fan of the first one. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't really get why people
Yeah.
liked it so much. I'm going to be frank, and you can even go back and listen to these shows. They're all up on YouTube finally. We were like, yeah, it's fine. Like, but it's better than Jared Leto's version of the Joker.
It's low bar.
A low bar, yeah, but it wasn't as earth-shattering as I think it was a case of right time, right place, and also it was just so different that we're like, okay, we'll give this a go. But with this one, it's like there is obviously the unchecked hubris, but then there's also like the story. So the story takes place after it. Arthur Fleck is back being, nothing. He's in jail. He's not the Joker, and then it's his battle trying to figure out if he is the Joker or he isn't. Harley Quinn shows up. I don't. She's not called Harley Quinn properly. She's called something similar to it, and eventually he ends up getting uh assaulted. Let's put it that way in prison, and then he gets stabbed. And that's the movie. And most of it is random non sequitur songs, and a courtroom drama, which is apparently incredibly boring. So there's two theories I have on this, Kev, that I personally believe or have seen enough evidence that could be true. One, Todd Phillips actually hated the reaction to the first one. Certain people liked the movie that he didn't want to like the movie, and he was like, "Okay, I'm gonna make a movie that they're gonna hate." Right?
You're talking about the fact that like everybody wanted this to be the incel movie,
Yeah, exactly.
and it wasn't.
And it wasn't. Yeah. Um, and maybe that's why he was kind of because I'm gonna make the complete opposite of that. No one's gonna tell me what to do, and here you go, right? Or what's a much more likely one. This is the one I actually believe, right? I love The Matrix 4 because it's terrible. I love the fact that it's so meta and they know that they were going to make a Matrix movie and they're like, right, you want a Matrix movie? Here we go. We're going to make something terrible. And it actively knows what it is. I think it's wonderful. I think it's masterwork of cinema, right? That could be what's happening here too. He's like, okay, we have to make a sequel to it. Everyone's getting paid. Everyone's we're all gonna, benefit from this, and we're just gonna make nonsense. And then I never have to make another one again. Kill off all the characters, finish it completely, and loosely tie it into Marvel into DC, so we can say we did something.
And that's exactly why I think I need to get my boots on
Yeah,
the ground and watch this movie.
that's
I
why
need
that's the one I actually believe because the first one doesn't could be true, but I think it's a bit more of a leap. That's a lot of effort. The second one, I mean, it's such a bad film that has nothing to offer anybody. There's nothing in
yeah,
it.
no.
We can't even make jokes about it. I think
It
that's why it's
scratches
failing, you know?
it scratches the itch of just pure fascination. I may have to watch this movie. But Dara, tell me this.
Go on.
I want you to cast your mind, take you now, throw you 10 years back, okay?
Okay.
And ask your 10 years previous self and tell them that in the same month there was a Joker movie in cinemas and a Penguin TV show. One is getting absolutely panned, and the other is being critically lauded as one of the best pieces of film this decade. And then have them guess which is which. Because I can guarantee you they would not guess it.
See,
have you watched The Penguin yet?
I haven't yet, and I will, and I've heard nothing but good things about it. And I think it's important to call out at this point. The Joker and the Joker 2 are not comic book movies. They actively what happened with the first one? With either one of my theories or the theories that's gone around that I just laid out there, whichever one is true, it really doesn't matter. The point is, Todd Phillips had a movie based on Taxi Driver, and he's like, "I'm just going to put Joker on this and get it made," and that's what happened. That is actually what happened, guys. The first Joker movie is not a comic movie. It's not even a Batman movie or a Joker movie. It's a movie that he made and just slapped the name on it. So, with that in mind, if someone had said that to me, I would have been like, yeah, well, the Penguin is a pretty good character. He just needs to have the space to grow. But it actually is unbelievable at the same time. You know what I mean? But it just shows you how mishandled it's been. Warner Brothers has been going through some truly baffling decisions as of late.
Well, I mean, like the past couple of I think the past couple of years has been growing pains as we get into the gun era, which I think is like really starting to take form.
Well, that's
I think like
that's what I was going to say. If you had said
Peacemaker and the Suicide Squad was kind of the first heralding of that.
Yes,
and we're getting I think there's a trailer dropping soon for his Batman for his Superman movie, which a lot of people have hopes in.
Well, look, James Gunn is an interesting figure because he had that controversy a couple of years ago. Fair enough, and that kind of put a lot dampened him personally for me. But his output has been very, very good. Obviously, what he did with Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, this is the man that took a talking raccoon and made him lovable to the point that Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is devastating.
Oh yeah.
So
I mean, I wouldn't even say the controversy itself, I think, is a blip. The most interesting thing about that controversy is that Disney took it kind of too far.
Yes.
And that's why that like blip on the radar is why he is now running DC.
Yeah, no, but I
Cinema.
like that. See, that's the thing. It's like it's such a weird thing to happen, and the whole reaction to it was just so weird. But at the same time, like from Disney, like Disney, who knows, right? But with Warner Brothers specifically, they're at war with themselves over different things. So no matter what you're looking at, obviously we talk about AEW on the Rewind. That's a mess at the moment, and they're owned by Warner, like they're like run through Warner Brothers. And then you have the comic stuff, which is still kind of a mess. But finally, it looks like under James Gunn, they have some stability. Scott Snyder, not Scott Snyder, Zack Snyder wasn't that stability. But even with the comics, speaking of Scott Snyder, Absolute Batman came out, and that's one of the best Batman books in decades. So there is like this revival of the DC brand, ironically, at the same time as the biggest comic book failure in history. To put this into perspective, Joker 2 is a bigger flop than Fantastic Four Stick, than as you said, Madam Web, which is great, than Morbius, than any of the worst of the Fox movies.
Wait, is
Really?
Joker 2 doing worse than Fan 4 Stick? Because Fan 4 Stick really felt like a pinnacle of the bottom of the well.
Um, it it's a massive financial bomb, dude. It costs so much money.
Do you know what? That's probably exactly it. It's Joker 2 cost so much where Fan 4 Stick probably didn't. That's
Yeah,
probably
like
it.
okay, so 200 million. So for anyone who doesn't know, in Hollywood, the budget is doubled, right? So if your movie costs 200 million to make, 200 million goes on marketing. So it needs to make 500 million to be profitable. So this movie had to make 500 million, 600 million to make money, and it had to make a billion to actually be successful. That's crazy that that's the way it is, but that's the way it is. So this movie put Warner Brothers 400 million in the hole, and nobody went to go see it. I didn't even go see it, and I will watch anything.
This man might see 3 Terrifier movies in a row.
Yeah, again, I saw Madam Web 6 times, twice in IMAX.
But Dara, that was for content.
Like as I said, I couldn't even justify watching Joker 2. I literally sat there with my phone open, going, "Oh, but then I have to watch it." I've never had that experience before. It was just truly bizarre, truly bizarre. Transformers 1 is quite good as well, by the way. I did see that.
I've been hearing so much good about Transformers 1. I got it. There's a handful of animated movies actually that I have to get out and see.
So
Because there's that and The Wild Robot look great.
Yeah, no, I did. That's not out. Yeah, I think it's out this weekend. But the choice was Transformers 1 or Joker 2, and I made the right
Okay,
choice.
well, yeah, no, you picked a good movie. That's fair.
See, here's the thing. So Transformers 1 is the most pointless nothing movie ever, right? Does not need to exist. Has no reason to exist other than to make money, which is a reason in and of itself. But it tells no story. It answers no questions. It's a McDonald's burger of a movie where it fills you. You've technically eaten something that is like food, and you're relatively happy until you think about it. Uh, it's a really good movie, to be fair. As in, like, if you like Transformers, you'll love it.
And like a McDonald's burger, it is gone before we realize it because Dara, that is going to be the end of our episode.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's real quick. It's Transformers 1, go see it. It's a lot of fun, but it's about nothing. Like Seinfeld. It's about nothing.
Well, that is going to do us for this show. Thank you all for listening. As Dara mentioned a couple of times, all of our backlog is up on YouTube now. You can check all of our shows out on our YouTube channel. And as well as all the other places like Spotify and whatever podcast streaming app of your choice. You can
Yes.
find all links to all of them through our website at nerdtoknowmedia.com. There also you can find our Patreon. We always appreciate that. And until next week, I've been Kev,
I'm there.
and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Alright, so you're listening to the podcast, you're like, hey, I'm not in Ireland, how do I get in touch? Well, TuneIn has you covered. That's how you can check us out live when we're on the radio. You go to TuneIn and download the app, or you can check out the live streams on nerdtoknowmedia.com or Phoenix 92.5 FM. If you want to get in contact with us, it's very easy. Nerd to Know Media everywhere. Nerd to Know Media on Twitter, Nerd to Know Media Instagram, Nerd to Know Media on Twitch, Nerd to Know Media at gmail.com if you want to reach out via email. Hope to hear from you soon. Check out the Wrestling Rewind here on Phoenix 92.5 FM every Tuesday at 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. And of course over on nerdtoknowmedia.com, the only wrestling podcast by wrestling fans who don't hate wrestling. We'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to a Nerd to Know Media production.